Ladies and gentlemen, I'm basically a lawyer and lawyers have notorious reputation. The notoriety arising from the fact that when the case is weak, the lawyers give a long introduction. And when the case is strong, they just get up and say, Your Lordship, the facts speak for themselves. And when she has given that introduction, don't be carried away by it. Deliberately, maybe such induction was given, maybe because the case is not very formidable. Therefore, don't have high expectations. Now, it's a privilege for me and for my institution, National Law School of India, University of Bangalore, the premier and preferred destination for quality legal education, to have been associated with this morning's deliberations. And I acknowledge with grateful thanks your invitation. And this morning I am here to speak to you about the challenges and opportunities and future relating to tomorrow's information technology. I start with the caveat that what my professor told me, one should always remember, today's knowledge is tomorrow's ignorance. Now that's how, where knowledge moves at an exponential pace, our responses always move at a linear space. And therefore the mismatch we have. With these few words of introduction, let me go through the presentation. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be amidst this eclectic gathering of the doyens of information technology and students. I thank the organizers for inviting me to this conference. I'm a lawyer by training, and I teach law. Accordingly, my brief remarks would be confined to the interface between law and information technology. Technology, by definition, is always several steps ahead of law. For the purpose of today's deliberations, I'll argue that technology without the sobering impact of law is neither workable nor desirable for a society. I repeat, technology without the sobering impact of law is neither workable nor desirable for the society. As lawyers, we spend a lot of time analyzing issues. A lot of those issues could be related to the definition of concepts. Today I intend to take examples from the latest corporate law, the Companies Act 2013. Needless to add, I will not assume any knowledge of corporate laws. I'm sure you are aware that the entities termed as companies cannot exist without the architecture of corporate law. After all, companies are basically artificial legal entities. By the way, being an artificial legal entity is not necessarily a bad thing. Indeed, companies are in good company. The company of Tirupati Balaji. Tirupati Balaji is also an artificial entity. He can sue and he can be sued. Perhaps one of the reasons behind drafting a brand new corporate law has been the recent strides in information technology. I'll give you just one example. A lot of things that factually used to happen at the companies were out of sync with the law. Let us take examples which should amplify the same. The 2013 Companies Act defines a foreign company as follows. Very interesting definition. Foreign company means any company or body corporate incorporated outside India, which has a place of business in India, whether by itself or through an agent, physically or through electronic media, where it conducts any business activity in India in any other manner. Three things are notable in this definition. First, place of business. Number two, electronic mode. Number three, the phrase in any other manner. All of you present here would appreciate that way back in 1956, it was impossible to imagine that a place of business could be what has been termed as an electronic mode. that would have been beyond our comprehension. I'm sure all of you would also appreciate that the nature of language is such that there are inherent limitations in expressing things. For instance, what's the meaning of electronic mode in the above provision of law which defines a foreign company? Information Technology Act is interesting. It tries to delicately balance, this is very important, the available information in public domain with the right of privacy. As to what the government of India has been doing in this regard is marvelous, I'm telling you. The homework that they are doing to balance these two things, right to privacy and the information in public domain. Merely because you have posted something on Facebook, do you waive your right to privacy? Further, if you do posting, if you do post something on Facebook, and if it is offensive to some people, could you be criminally liable? As technology changes at fast pace and with fast pace, there are no easy answers to such questions. One of the benefits of living in a democratic country, please remember, is that we get to debate all this without fear or favor. This is very important. And that's the reason why people say the only solution to the evils of democracy is to give more democracy. Because you have a right to debate, you have a right to discuss. Of course, there is no gainsaying that there is a constitutional mandate to guarantee that there is life with dignity for everyone. You have a constitution, under the constitution, and which guarantees life to dignity. Could that guarantee be given up? The constitutional guarantee of living with dignity, could it be given up merely because we live in an era of cloud computing? Of course, last emphatic answer would be in the negative. The rationale is simple. Technology without the sobering impact of law, again I repeat, is neither workable nor desirable in the society. The sobering impact of law is very important. With that food for thought, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your patience and have a great day of deliberations and have a great day of deliberating and debating issues on information technology today. My grateful thanks to the organizers. Thank you very much. Thank you.